So you have been a gynecologist. We get a lot of questions from parents that the girls on the spectrum, pre-menstrual stage and the post-menstrual stage and during their menstruation, there's a lot of trouble that these children go through. Can you just tell us what exactly they're going through?
I would still recommend, don't wait for the menses to start. Start early on. So what I would tell parents who are parents to girls, that look out for those secondary sexual characters. If you see a breast bud, if you see hair in the private areas, you have 2 years. You have 2 years before the actual menses start. So the parents should be aware of these things. Is a very painful experience, not just for the individual with disability, but also for the family as such.
We want to remove the shame factor. That's the first aspect that comes in. But we want them to know that there are adults available who you can seek guidance from. You just need to know that you're not alone. Everybody goes through this.
So welcome both of you to the Dolly Show today. And to be very frank, I'm really very happy to have you both here because it's a totally different topic that we are going to discuss today. So here we have our professional who is Aisha ma'am, and we have our parent who is Ashwini ma'am, Dr. Ashwini. So welcome both of you. And lot of exciting and interesting topics that we're going to touch base and discuss deep as well. So to start over with you, ma'am. So you have been a special educator, and from there, now you are the principal of the Aditya Birla Integrated School. What a beautiful and inspiring journey. If you could tell us about that, ma'am.
So I think, yes, my journey as a special educator itself has been very interesting and fulfilling. But it began a little before I pursued special education itself. So I've always had this ambition, you could call it a childhood fantasy of teaching. So during college also, I was tutoring students. And that's when I came across, I think, my first special needs student who required more than what the school or me for that matter was providing at the time. And this was a time when I was pursuing my master's in counseling, and consequently I just heard about the special education course, the B.Ed in special ed. So that's when I decided that once I complete my master's, I would definitely do a course. In that sense, I wasn't really trained, or it was more instinctual at that point of time, looking for strategies, how to engage, how to ensure retention. So that's where the journey actually started. And I think this passion just took greater shape once I was actually in the classroom. And, the presence of students does that. I mean, they challenge you in ways that you can't expect. So it's really I've been lucky, I think I should say, to have the right opportunities to interact with the right people, like-minded people with similar wavelengths. So in that sense, it's been a really, really fulfilling, I won't call it a journey because I'm at one juncture and hopefully we have a long way to go. But yeah, plenty of learnings along the way. So it's been interesting.
Fantastic. And we do know the Aditya Birla Integrated School is really doing wonders. So thanks that you all have come up with such a school so that these children and these parents have, to be very frank, parents are clueless and parents have to run around here there. So thanks. Now we have a place where these children can really and parents can look forward to. Definitely we'll delve deep into that. Before that, ma'am, welcome. And you are a parent of 2 children. Also, you are a gynac. I would really love to know your journey as a parent and then definitely as a professional as well.
So my journey as an autism parent began when my son was 1.5 years old. Having said that, like being a doctor didn't make a difference in diagnosing him because I'm a gynecologist, and autism was a 2-mark short note in pediatrics, which was a 50-mark subject. So it was clearly an option. And when I did come to know and recognize the red flags, my sister's a psychologist, so she helped me. It struck hard because I remember I had just cleared out my post graduation and daring to go, wanting to do super specialization. So as far as my personal aspirations were concerned, it was really a hit. And me and my husband are batchmates, and wherein came the role of one of us going ahead and doing super specialization. I wasn't generally good with children, so it was decided that he would go ahead. So I remember a professor telling me that, Ashwini, now you're done for. You are now, autism is clearly going to take, you're going to be a full-fledged mom. You have to give up your professional career. Fortunately, we have our own nursing home, and my mother-in-law's been a great support, who's a gynecologist. So I could do both. I could juggle between both. It was also a question of what started was why me, and then my sister was like, why not me? And it gradually sunk in. But it is not about having autism given to you as a packed package and you opening it up and seeing it for what it is. It is about discovering it every single day. And it's not like I've been there, done there. No, it's still discovering, and every single day living it up and thinking, oh, this is what autism means. And then with my daughter. So it has been a journey. It has not been an easy journey because there have been ups and downs. And it's about, every single day waking up and saying why. And then at the end of the day, you get a closure that it's all right. It is going to be all right. And with Niva, my daughter, who's also on the spectrum, it's still, the process is on. But there's a Japanese saying, it's a haiku. My barn having burnt down, I can now see the moon. So it's only after the aftermath you can actually see the beauty of autism. It's not like it was always there. It's about discovering it. So it's been a hard journey. It still is a hard journey, but I think we are in a happy space, largely because we have a great support system in terms of schooling, in terms of support, family support. So we are good.
Fabulous, fabulous. I totally resonate with what you say, you've said just now, because yes, it's difficult for parents to come to terms, and it's a daily struggle. That's for sure. And it's a daily learning as well. Yeah. Great. So over to you, ma'am. We would love to know about the initiatives that are taken in the Aditya Birla Integrated School.
So do you mean from an academic perspective or therapy? Because being integrated, it's a balance of both.
Yes.
So perhaps.
So first we talk about academics, and then definitely we talk about the balance with the therapies as well.
Okay, so to begin with, we do have 2 programs in school. We try to, a lot of parents who come to us have this dream that the child should have as close to a mainstream school experience as possible. So we do somewhere succumb to that society expectation of, completion of that milestone board exam and then whatever comes next. And while there have been certain leaps and, initiatives to kind of change that perspective, we are still a long way from seeing it become a reality. So to kind of accommodate those needs, so to speak, we have one program where we have the conventional grades 1 to grade 12. Conventional only in terms of the structure, but they do have remedial programs. They have therapies integrated within the timetable. So that's where the word integrated really comes in. We have a multidisciplinary team of therapists as well as special educators. So that's one of our programs, which is the inclusive education program. And a lot of emphasis is placed on experiential learning because, again, the whole conventional classroom paper pencil method doesn't really work. In fact, I don't think it's effective with any child regardless of whether they are a special needs child or not. So that's something that our endeavor always is, to make that learning very relatable to the children. So that's one of our programs, the IEP, as we call it. And then we have another program in school called the Differentiated Learning Program. So that's where we have children with more extraordinary needs. Maybe some of their needs require a more functional curriculum, some more emphasis on, vocational training. So that's where we have the early intervention, we have the global intervention, and now we are also venturing, it's an ambitious leap, but we are trying to offer the NIOS program to the children on the DLP, because some of them are capable or have the potential to, pursue that avenue. So that was the general thought that we have. So this is our academic structure. And like I said, it's very, very experience based. There are a lot of activities. The teachers try to make it as multisensorial as possible, because as we know, children have different kinds of intelligence. Some are more visual, some are more auditory. A lot of them are tactile, kinesthetic. They require movement. So we try to accommodate all those aspects in teaching, and it just makes it fun for both the educator as well as the students. So that's our academic program in a very brief nutshell.
Beautiful. I mean, having a principal who has such a beautiful thought process, I can now understand why it's trickling down so well within the staff, within the children. Because when you said this statement, it's fun. So then for children as well, learning gets easier. Y'all are understanding these children. And then from that space, having these children, beautiful. Rightly at the right place. Beautiful. So over to you, ma'am. So your children are in the Aditya Birla School. So please tell us your experience.
So when this would be Shaunab, my oldest son's 11th year, and Dabis, he started when he was short of 5 years. And I remember we going school hunting.
Yeah.
We had this idea that, Shaunab would be in a school where his peers are neurotypical and he's neurodiverse. And we had this noble idea and a place, where he would be accepted, and we don't need to tell what autism is. Unfortunately, that did not, plan out the way we wanted. In fact, we went to 10 different schools. He was accepted in 2, where he was given. We were made to feel that it's a big, favor they are doing because we are doctors. He was given a class younger to what he would have been, and they said only one child per classroom. And there was another school, the principal said, how are you even here? You are doctors. And why would you even think of a normal school for your child? Why are you not thinking about a special school? And this was, not so good experiences as parents. We went to another special school who had come in the same year. And they told that he did not belong in the group where they wanted, that would do good to him. And I remember talking about the Right to Education Act to my husband, where they cannot refuse it. Yes. And in fact, so far that if a school says that we do not have the structure, the RTE says that we will train the teachers so that school cannot say no. But what made a difference was what my husband said to me, that why would you want to send your child to a place where he's not wanted? About it being a struggle every single day. And then we discovered the Aditya Birla Integrated School. Honestly, it's a great distance for us. We stay in Andheri and the school is in Fort. But some of my therapists said that it's a special school, it's an inclusive school, it's an integrated school. You shouldn't mind traveling so far, because you know that your child is going to be in a safe place. The child is going to be respected for his needs. And the child is going to be, you don't need to explain what autism is, where all the teachers are special educators. Mm-hmm. There's therapy being taken care of. And we had pet therapy and everything what we had. And it was such a beautiful dream. It was an easy decision. And it was such an easy decision then that for Niva, we didn't even go to other schools. We knew that, okay, we are going to go to the same school. So, and having said that, the way Shaunak has grown, he's now 16 years. and the confident adult he's going to be, and the confident teen that he is. He loves his music. He plays the Casio, sings. I don't think it could have been possible with the academic pressures, which he would have gone maybe in a neurotypical school. And it's the beauty of the school which has helped him become what he is. So for us, it has been such a positive experience that I mean, there are parents who call me, and I never hesitate. Of course, it's also a personal experience because the school has always been open. It's not that it's a perfect structure, but it's perfect for us. And it's about the openness with which we can put in our requests, our asks, and they're always catered to. They are catered in a way which is a balanced way and not just like, oh, I want this. And no, it's a talk. We can talk it out. And that has been the beauty. And I think it's no wonder that it was the best special school in India. And we have got that award. So we are actually very proud parents to be in this school. And we are hoping that Niva also grows into the same way when Shaunak has reached. So fingers crossed.
We are so fortunate enough that we have the principal of such an amazing school. I mean, see, you saw the worry of the parent. They went to so many schools, rejected, refused, and the kind of words that they have to hear. And there we have a school which is really taking care of these children. So we would really love to thank you, ma'am. So to have such a school in place. Believe me, we get so many parents and they're so troubled that, we can't find schools.
So please, just to add here, it is the vision of our chairperson, Ms. Anija Birla, who's a great advocate for mental health as well as education for all. So that's something, when you talk about trickling from the leadership, that's where we get our juice to work from in that sense. And it is a vision that we are fortunate to be the custodians of, and every day genuinely is a learning. So there are no experts as such in that sense, because a lot of it is instinct based. And I think Mr. Joshi made a very important point about the collaboration, because one without the other would not really have any long-term impact. So the school community with the parents is the child's best chance at actually optimizing their potential. So we really believe in what we do.
So, ma'am, there is TABIS and a lot of programs associated to that. So could you just tell us about that more?
Sure. So I think one of the foundations of what we do is the belief that academics may not necessarily be for every child, but at the same time, everyone has their strengths. We kind of just need to identify where that lies. So from there is where our co-curricular programs come in. We have a lot of focus on events as well, which I'll give you a little sneak peek into. But very importantly, we also have, like I mentioned, a multidisciplinary approach. So when you say different disciplines, one aspect is the academics, of course, and that's where the teaching faculty comes in. But the other aspect is the therapies, which is again, extremely important. And the earlier the intervention begins, the better the child has, again, chances of success later in life, of managing their difficulties. So we have a team of occupational therapists, we have speech therapists, we have behavior therapists, and of course we have our school counselor as well. So every child receives therapy based on their need. So OT, as we call it, every child receives OT in school, because that is one of the, again, needs of all our children, whether it's attention issues or motor issues, perception, all those get taken care of by our occupational therapy department. And speech is again need-based, because not every child may be presenting with speech needs. But a lot of our children, particularly on the spectrum, have a lot of sensory sensitivities to different textures, to different temperatures it could be. So that's where, and this impacts everyday activities like eating. or even the fabrics that they may be tolerant to. So that's where our therapy department really is very important. Even for something as maybe taken for granted as meals that children eat, we work with our therapy department very closely to develop certain tolerance to certain, different types of food, because that again becomes a life skill for the children. They may not always have access to certain kinds of food. So a lot of it is very real based, very life skill based. With regard to behavior therapy, again, there are a lot of the behavior we always feel and believe is the tip of the iceberg. What you see is hardly a glimpse of what is actually going on with the child, in the child's mind, in the maybe immediate surroundings of the child. So what we believe is you need to identify the antecedent, which is what sort of prompts that behavior, and then of course create a connection between the behavior and a consequence that it may lead to. So this becomes a big part of what we do also under behavior therapy. And with younger children particularly, it's very abstract for them, so it needs to be concretized. So therefore we have the rewards and reinforcement system that we follow, where a certain perhaps appropriate or desirable behavior then gets a reward to simply build that association. And a lot of undesirable or inappropriate behaviors are often the result of not having a substitute that is appropriate. So we work on substituting behaviors as well. And there also we kind of work on consequences for inappropriate behaviors, so that children understand that within the school's protective walls, perhaps there'll be empathy, there will be understanding. But the moment they step out, they may not, unfortunately, receive the same. So that's where therapy forms a very big part of what we do. Speaking about the events, because like I explained earlier, academically not all children might be inclined, but some of them are very oriented to music or to the fine arts. We have some lovely artworks that some of our children churn out. And I personally am not very great at art, so I'm very, very envious of that ability. Yeah, so from an appreciation perspective, definitely. So they do have a lot of talents which then find a platform in our events. So we have academic events, like one of our biggest events is Project Day in school, which is again applicable to the DLP as well as the IEP section, where the children work on a certain project till its completion, and then we invite the parents to see what they've done. And some of our projects are also conducted at home, so the parents actually form part of the activities, and then they get to see the whole thing to its fruition. So whether it's public speaking, whether it's creating certain documents or aids which our children may be good at. Those who are good at crafts might create models. Those who are good with technology might create presentations. So we try to kind of leverage on every child's strengths through our events. So Project Day is just one of our events. We also have we have a language fest and a math fest, because with a lot of children who have difficulties, math becomes a block in their mind. So we try to break that with fun activities, trivia, games that are related to math, so that again the association changes and it's perceived as a more fun and skill-based subject, because you may try to leave math, but math will never leave you. It's a fact. So and a lot of our teachers also learn along the way how to make it more fun, relatable to the children. We have events like our annual concert, which we take great pride in, because maybe we have that luxury of smaller numbers. So every child takes part in our events. It's not that, you're picking out those who can do certain things while the others perhaps are just spectators. It's not like that. So at Tabis, that's one moment of pride to see all our children on stage. And that's a feeling I don't think is like any other, because whether it's singing, whether it's dances, whether it's even acts for that matter, some of them put up skits, the whole atmosphere is unparalleled in that sense, for the child as well as for the parents and the team. So a lot of emphasis on all-round development is through our school events. We also have our annual camp for our older children, which again, we believe that now in this whole digital era, sometimes getting out into the outdoors, appreciating nature, building things with your own hands, that's something that seems to be taking a backseat in today's day and age. So we actually have events like maybe raft building, which might require a certain element of math. Of course, all these are directed by adults, but the children do take part in those, and they then have to test it out in open waters as well. So I also don't know. Yes, so we've all learned, like I'm saying, we all learn along the way. So we've had some really interesting experiences that we've been able to provide to the children. And they always come away different from what they were before they left. So that's, again, something that we take great pride in, the real world experiences.
Yes. So, ma'am gave us a beautiful explanation about the amazing initiatives that they have been taking. I would love to know the parents' perspective, how beautifully it is working for your children.
So, like ma'am said, it gives us a platform. It gives us opportunities of learning. When you are parents to differently able children, not always do we get opportunities to teach our children those life skills in a safe environment. Like I remember my oldest son, he went for a day trip and he had to change clothes there. So it started with teaching privacy. It started with helping him know where he can change it, who can he look up to. And this gave me an opportunity to work on those skills, being aware of his safety. Would you follow your group? Who is your group? And it was so beautiful. And I remember talking with the teacher about that. And the teachers we decided that we are going to let Shaunak be and see if he's following the group. And it happened so beautifully well. Even for Niva, she gets an opportunity in a project day she may not be able to speak, but she goes on the stage, tells her name either through her communication device, which the school allows, and is very much interested in imposing the children, the ASCs. And she would tell, my name is Niva Zoshi, and she would be able to present a project. She has cooking at school, wherein she's taught how to squeeze a lemon. Which is, I would want her to learn, because even more than what the academics would, I would want her to be aware of what, and she likes it. So we are following her. So these are the opportunities which I feel we wouldn't have had otherwise. And it's a safe environment. We know that our children are looked after. So I don't mind Shaunak being on his own and without the fear of him getting lost. So I know that, he's looked after. So I think thanks to the school, we are getting these opportunities. Wow, beautiful opportunities.
100% validation from the parents, which is so amazing. And I can see that satisfaction, that yes, my kids are looked after and everything is being taken care of and their future is also being shaped superbly well. Wow, beautiful, amazing. Now I would love to take this opportunity that I have got. So you have been a gynecologist. We get a lot of questions from parents that the girls on the spectrum, so the pre-menstrual stage and the post-menstrual stage and during their menstruation, there's a lot of trouble that these children go through. Can you just tell us what exactly they're going through? And then we can also talk about what can be done for this.
So girls on the spectrum are very different. They internalize everything. So even menstruation can be a very painful experience for the girls. Whenever I talk to a parent, we try and pick them up before they hit the menses part, because that is when we can start working on their skills. It has been known that girls on the spectrum do get puberty earlier than what their peers would. There is something called as precocious puberty, wherein the periods may start even as young as 5 years old. So what I would tell parents who are parents to girls, that look out for those secondary section characters. If you see a breast bud, if you see hair in the private areas, you have 2 years. You have 2 years before the actual menses start. So the parents should be aware of these things, should be aware of the secondary sexual characters which are happening. They can start working on skills like potty training, because what does happen is, if a child is not trained in the potty and then the periods start, is a very painful experience, not just for the individual with disability but also for the family as such. Again, in case there is earlier signs, there are ways to help the child delay the menses. This can be done with the help of a pediatric endocrinologist, doing tests and everything. So it's not the end of the world. If we feel that the child needs a lot of work with sensory issues or activities of daily living, we can delay puberty with an expert's advice. I would still recommend, don't wait for the menses to start. Start early on. Washing hands is as simple as that can be taught at the age of 3 and 4 with visuals. See that we teach the child interoception, where the child is able to identify what they are going through. For example, pain. A premenstrual pain could be a very negative experience for our girls. And if there is a lack of communication on the child's part, whether it is verbal, whether it is through ASEs, the child is going to have it terribly, different. Like, for example, a parent called me saying that the child was so, a very calm child, a very calm girl, was in distraught. She couldn't handle it. And a simple pain medication helped her. But helping her identify that I'm going through this and helping her to communicate her needs, wherein a lot of things comes from modeling. Like a parent would model that I am in pain. There is a pain scale available. I am 1 on 10 in pain. I am 2 on 10 on pain. So what can I do? I can take a medicine if I'm 5 on 10. I can use a hot water bag with mama's help, or a electrical hot bag with mama's help. So these things need to start early on. And there are beautiful visuals available to help the girls know what menses is. And again, if there are a lot of menstrual issues, like say heavy bleeding and everything, there are medicines available. There is a lot of thing about hysterectomies in girls in the spectrum, which is usually asked. That should not be the first, approach. There are medicines available to help them tide over the periods, to reduce the period cycle, or prolong the period cycle. Say 3 periods in a year would be manageable instead of monthly periods. So there are injectables available. Of course, all this is with the help of an expert, not just off the counter. It is done in discussion with an expert. So these are avenues available. So for girls on the spectrum, please start early. I know it's like, you're running towards a finish line, but don't be scared. Just empower yourself. So that's it.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation to deal with, because we have had calls from parents asking us, yes, you were so right. Parents just want to opt for, totally removing the uterus.
Yes.
So that can have definitely adverse effects on
The most important thing for an intellectual, of a person with a disability, is the international laws. When we talk about hysterectomy, say that you have to take the individual's choice into matter. And the worst possible scenario for a hysterectomy is that does not take away the chances of abuse of that person, because then the uterus is not there. We are not going to be able to know that if the person has undergone any abuse, and it is only done in case menstruation is a very negative experience for the person with disability. And that is when a group call is taken, all the avenues are met with, and that is when that thing comes into this picture, like hysterectomy. And that this is what we are calling non-therapeutic hysterectomy. Therapeutic hysterectomy is different, where we do it for therapies, like heavy menses. That is later on.
It's as per the condition. Or
It's individualized, yes, and family centric. Yeah,
and it has to be done under the supervision. All these decisions be taken under the supervision.
And there's
of
help
the-
available. People are more aware. Gynecologists are more aware of persons with disabilities. There's help available.
Yes, we have you for sure. So definitely we will tell parents to connect with you. You can definitely guide them. So, ma'am, are there any programs, or as ma'am said, there are a lot of videos or visuals available. So, is there something that is shown in school to these children?
Oh, so you mean in
educate
terms
about
of dealing with puberty, and in fact, Mrs. Joshi herself conducts growing up sessions, yeah, with our children. So because there is a lot of other, for a child on the spectrum to understand what is happening is very important. That structure is vital, and when these changes they themselves undergo, they sense it, they know it's happening, but they don't have the words to express what they're going through. So to even that assurance that you're not alone, this happens with everybody, and this is the help, you can come to us if you have, even that really helps. So we do have sessions where there are it's a two-pronged approach. One is the actual anatomical aspect, and the other is the social aspect, which our counselor then follows up on. So what are the kind of changes you can expect in terms of maybe, feelings towards somebody. So that aspect also gets taken care of, but in a age appropriate, ability appropriate manner. But it's important to have these conversations with our children so that they know we want to remove the shame factor. That's the first aspect that comes in. But we want them to know that there are adults available who you can seek guidance from. You just need to know that you're not alone. Everybody goes through this. So speaking as matter of factly as possible, creating that platform where they can transparently ask questions, seek guidance, that's something that we also place a lot of emphasis on. It's part of, again, life skills. It's as simple as that.
Wow. I think you have covered all the aspects. I asked you a basic question as to, are you taking those sessions? You have gone far ahead. Wow. Beautiful. Amazing.
And Mr. Joshi actually has been very, very helpful in these sessions, because I guess, again, from a parent's perspective, there is that understanding and empathy. And she's naturally very good at relaying the technical information also. So
Fabulous.
Woof. Because a normal Rhinite could just teach what the puberty is, but what we as parents and what as a school we realize is there are certain things which are private. There's private act, there's private paths, and there's private touch. Now for the older children, there's private information and, private talk. Because what kind of talk is, so these are the, in fact, as a parent, I learned that we have to focus on these things because they are an answer to everything.
Okay. So, ma'am, how does a typical day at the Aditya Birla Integrated School look like?
Okay, so first of all, there is hardly any such thing as a typical day, although we try to make it that way. So like I explained earlier, structure is important for our students. So they do have a timetable in place, which includes a balance of everything. The academic classes, we have co-curricular activities. So every day of the week, at least one co-curricular activity is planned. So whether it's dance, drama, art, different activities, and the therapies as well. So that's our timetable for the day. But so when the children come in first thing in the morning, we have our assembly where we begin the day on that note for, setting the tone for the day. We have our school prayer, we have our school song, and the national anthem, of course. So the children have that experience of what it's like to have that assembly. Certain days of the week, we also have something called a circle time, where the class teacher spends a little time with the children. And this is done in different ways. Either they prepare something for that day. It could be reading of the news, or maybe there is some kind of a game that encourages social interaction. So different aspects where the class teacher is just with the children, spending time understanding what's happening with them. So this again gives the children an opportunity to express themselves, to wait for their turns while the others speaking. So that is our circle time. Aside from that, then they go through the motions of all their classes, and we do have sometimes unprecedented situations where children may be struggling with different aspects, and or there could be certain potential triggers which just create a situation where a class may not proceed as planned. So we are prepared for all sorts of detours in that sense as well. And again, coming back to, you may have a plan for the day, but whether or not you're able to stick to that really is another question altogether. And here that rigidity doesn't help. So there's a lot of adaptation that happens. Sometimes children have had certain experiences. They may not be well. They haven't slept well. You can't really force a certain interaction. So we do balance that out. Sometimes they're just given their quiet time to settle down and come join the class if they're ready, or if they have something that they have to share at that point of time, then they are told, okay, we'll finish this much, then you can share. So there's always that constant negotiation happening with the team. And of course, during co-curriculars also, they really enjoy the activities. So that's how a typical day in TABIS looks like. A lot of it, we take cues from the children themselves about what kind of a day they are having. And then we add to it. Some of the lessons also might just be adapted, keeping the child's current state in mind. So, yeah.
Nice. So, I mean, are the parents also, then there are some parents. So this was supposed to be done and it's not been done. So definitely you all must be, passing on that information to the parents that yes, today the child was not in a mood or didn't want to do this activity and hence it has not been done. So has that ever happened with you?
Yeah, I think, that is where I have had a very good experience. Like, I remember when Miss Aisha was the junior school principal, I remember her sending me a mail saying that please prepare Shaunak that his classes were now going to be on the 5th floor, then the 3rd floor, because there's some work being done. And this was so beautiful because as a head of that section, she remembered his needs and the fact that he would have a rough day if he were to go in a different thing. And I think it's about all those tiny things, and the school does make it very clear that we as parents need to tell them if the child has not slept well, if there was anything happening at school, at the home front, which may affect the learning at school. And I mean, we make it a point that we do that, because if the child has been unwell or, recovering from a viral, they may not have the same energy to do that. In fact, my daughter goes to the DLP section, the differentiated learning, and each day a mail at least goes in that, she's not slept well. So the teachers know that how much do they push or how much do they expect the performance. So I think that has been really helped to, having the to and fro communication.
Yeah, the communication between the provider, the parents, yes, that's very important, because the teacher needs to know what has happened and the parent as well. So yeah, this collaboration is very important. Yes, for sure. Yes, it's very important. Okay, so we also have a lot of parents who ask us questions about the first child has been on the spectrum. Should we have another child?
That's right.
So, what is the answer to this?
And so, firstly, as a Dynac, the unfortunate part about a family having a second child is many a times the first child is undiagnosed. That's when they would come as like with a second pregnancy, and that's what I have noticed with most of my patients, that they come for the ANC checkup for the second time, saying that the first child has just been diagnosed as being on the spectrum. Now, with the earlier diagnosis, the parents do have a informed decision which they can make. Honestly speaking, this is a very individualized decision because a lot of factors come. Scientifically, as a doctor, I can tell the incidence, which is 20% in a sibling. If there is more than one sibling who is on the autism spectrum, the incidence is 37%. If the first child is a boy child, the chances are slightly less in the second sibling. If the first child is a girl child, the incidence is slightly higher. The known cause of autism, the possibly known cause, one of the rare causes is fragile eggs. So what I would, as a parent who comes to me, wants to know about the chances, is I would rather the mother do the blood test of a fragile eggs, because it's a X-linked recessive disorder. So if the mother is a carrier, we can then, decide. There's no need to put the child under a blood test to know, and blood tests are so difficult for our children. So that would be the first advice. Second would be to actually know how you are placed as a family. Like when I knew the incidence is so high and I told my husband, it was our decision that we know what to do, we know where to go. Even if it were autism, we were mentally prepared. Because Shaunak was settled in his school, the majority part of his day was, spent in a setting which he was accepted. We were okay with that. So it is a very individualized decision. Scientifically speaking, as a gynac, I can tell parents that you need to, do a double marker test. And it's not for the decision making, but just to know if your pregnancy is going all right. They need to take care of their nutrition. They need to ensure that they go to the term, because autism is slightly more in preterm babies. There are studies which show. So as far as a parent, my journey is concerned, I did everything what I could, having myself investigated, did a fragile eggs. But I never did something called as a microarray, which is a test which will tell us the actual incidence, which is done between the index case, that is a child who has autism, and the child which is in utero. Again, that is a very individualized decision, and I would recommend parents to actually have this discussion with their gynac about the pros and cons and the incidence, how much would you know, and what is it that you want at the end of the day. Because right now, when I think about Shaunak and Niva, these are two beautiful neurodivergent children, and I would rather them have each other than one being neurotypical and one struggling to understand the needs of either. So they know where they are. They know, like Shaunak is aware of Niva's needs. And for me, it's a blessing. Of course, we as family, we have to think about two individuals, whether they are going to be financially independent or not. We have to think as a family of our retirement, of providing them financially the lifestyle which they are living right now. So that's why having a second child should be thought really well about the pros and the cons. And just because it's easy for one person doesn't mean it's going to be easy for the other. They should actually have this discussion with the gynac and then go ahead with the second child.